Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out today, and thank you to Daisy for participating in this conversation.
Intense.
Just to begin with, to kick things off here, we are here to talk about you as a performer, but one thing I always love asking people in the film industry is, what would you be doing if you weren't in entertainment? What would you do if you weren't an actress?
When I was working in a shop before I started working as an actor, and my friend who's a musician was like, you shouldn't have a fallback option because then you're planning to fall back. And I was like, ooh, thoughtful. So I weirdly was trying to think about this the other day, and I can't, when something's your life, really, and you're like to do the thing that you love, it's so crazy to think about another world where that's not the case. I do love psychology, I suppose, so that. I think teachers are amazing. I don't know that I'd be a good one. Let's go with psychology.
Yeah. When you know, you know. Yeah. When you are looking at new projects to potentially produce or perform in, what do they need to have for you to say yes?
I don't know. I think it's just like a special source of reading the thing, and you either know or you don't. I had dinner with someone a few years ago who's pretty high up in the film situation, and he goes, "The way you choose projects is so interesting." And I was like, "Huh, I don't know if that's a compliment or not." I don't mind about size. I don't mind about. There are lots of things I don't mind about. I would say the main thing is the script. And then oftentimes, if it's a director that's exciting, that is great. And then obviously, as the actors come on, hopefully the project becomes more appealing as time goes on. But first and foremost, the script.
Well, going off of that, do you find yourself drawn to characters? Like, have you found a through line in the characters that you've played if you look back at your filmography?
I feel in the last few years, Magpie included, I play women who are having a pretty hard time, who are often slightly separate or isolated in some way. That tends to be the thing. That's not necessarily what I want to do all the time. I would love to do something with like a group that's joyful too, but that tends to be the thing, battling against something, whether that's internal, external, overcoming some mental or physical obstacle.
At what point in your career did you say to yourself, like, wow, I'm really doing this. Like, I am making a career out of this thing that I always knew I wanted to do. Like, you call yourself an actress when people ask, what do you do for a living?
Funnily enough, the night we found out we got into this festival, I was shooting a film in England with a great script and a director that I love. And it was also overwhelming, and my husband had just been cast in the film he just did, and I was like having this overwhelming sense of gratitude and joy and wonder. And I sent my agent this hilarious voice note, crying my eyes out. And I was like, all I wanted to do was be a working actor, and it's happening. So that was like a wonderful moment. I feel like the thing is, you always feel like, is this going to last? Like, is it going to be okay? So those moments of real wonder and joy and being able to just go, okay, I'm working, and that was a great day.
I love that it happened so recently, too, after many films. I was reading, taking a step back to the beginning of your career, I was reading an interview where when you were cast in Star Wars, J.J. Abrams, the director, said something very interesting to you, which is understand the scale. The implication there being that Rey, or being in a Star Wars movie, it's a different type of commitment. I am wondering, because that's a heavy thing for, you were 20 when you were cast? That's a heavy thing for a 20-year-old to think about in any circumstance, let alone being on that scale and on that stage in that way. How did you weigh that when deciding ultimately to take on Rey?
I mean, there was no world in which I wasn't going to. I think it's one of those things that, looking back, it was a very wonderful thing for him to say. But of course, at the time, I was like, yay! Honestly, I didn't fully understand the scale. So it was something that was, it became more apparent, but until it's really here and really real, it was hard to understand that. But the joy and love with which we've been embraced in this new trilogy is wonderful. But at the time, I mean, who could have known, you know?
At what point did you realize it? Was it when the film was actually coming out, or was it prior to that?
I think probably when we did the first sort of hello moment, which was, I'm going to say D23, I think, or Celebration. It was, because again, I didn't even know what a convention was. Like, there was so much I didn't know about. I didn't know people traveled to other countries and, like, talked about the films. Like, there was so much to take in. But I remember the first time we were out sort of together, I remember thinking, wow, this is amazing. But again, it is like, you're just a small part of it. And of course, it's wonderful how Rey is received, but the films are the films. So to be part of something and to be part of a team of people, you never feel alone, like you're shouldering something. You feel like you're part of a team of people who are hopefully bringing joy to people.
Well, going off of that, I am wondering, because every couple of years it happens when a newcomer performer gets thrust into this position of playing an outsized role. We see that with franchise filmmaking and superhero filmmaking. I'm wondering then, what advice would you give to someone entering a position similar to the one that you were entering into at the beginning of Star Wars? What advice would you offer?
Try and enjoy it. It's so individual, really. But try and enjoy it. I think a lot of people were like, your life is going to change. And so in the lead up to the film coming out, I was so scared, when actually, of course, things changed in a great way. But I was so caught up with worrying about what other people were telling me was going to happen that it took, honestly, to making the third film till I felt like, okay, like, I'm good, like, I deserve to be here, and as much as I work hard, and like, I'm, so try and enjoy it and embrace it, because also life goes quick, as we all know, like, it just goes by in a flash. So probably just breathe and enjoy the ride.
When you were coming out of that last Star Wars movie, you had spent a lot of years on those films, and you had done several films in between as well, but those films were time-consuming, I might imagine. How did you go about looking to navigate your career in terms of, post-Star Wars? I'm sure you had a lot of offers coming in. How did you figure out where you wanted to go next after such a heightened time?
There weren't that many offers coming in. It's not that there weren't, like, any, but I remember finishing and thinking, oh my God, and it felt so quiet and strange. And then we went into lockdown. So it was like a very strange time to, like, sit with the quiet and honestly, like, grieving a time of my life. It'd been 8 years by that point of being with people, working with people, and suddenly it was done. It was so strange. So it was, sitting with that was odd. And then honestly, I felt not like I was beginning again, but it took a few months for me to start reading stuff that felt real, at least, that it was actually going to go. Yeah, I don't know that I felt like I was researching, but there was more time suddenly. But there was also so much time because of lockdown. That's a terrible answer. But basically, I sat with everything for a little while. And the first thing I did was The Marsh King's Daughter. So it was also strange to be back on a set, because I hadn't been on a set for a while by the time I was back there. And then the last few years has been really busy and amazing, and I've got to do so many different things with so many different people. So it has been a different exploration of myself and my career.
When you were coming back to set for the first time on The Marsh King's Daughter, it sounds like such an interesting transitional period, because not only are you coming out from Star Wars, you're coming out of COVID, but that transition from, you know, massive tentpole filmmaking to Marsh King's Daughter, which was smaller, and you had done smaller films like Ophelia in the middle there, but what was that experience like, having had that time during COVID and then coming back to a set that is very different from the previous set that you had been on, you know, years prior?
Again, I don't know that I felt so differently the scale of it. At that time, I was so happy to be at work. It was really nice to be like, ooh, I'm doing something new. And then I followed a few weeks after wrapping that with Sometimes I Think About Dying, which was in budget and scale and everything. So in that time, that was interesting, but I didn't feel, coming into The Marsh King's Daughter, I didn't feel like it was so different, because also it was quite, it was like big scale in terms of the landscape and the story, and but really I was like, yay, because honestly I just love acting. I was like so happy to be acting. And strangely enough, the little girl who was cast in that, who inspired Magpie, well, inspired the seed of Magpie, that was so wonderful to be with a child. And we had been, obviously everyone was having an awful difficult time prior to that, and she was this like bright spark of joy, and we played together for 2 months and had this relationship on and off screen. We were like little buds. So she was a real joyful way back into everything.
Well, that's a great transition into Magpie, which is the film that you are here with. For the people who haven't, you know, been able to see it from the premiere yesterday, can you kind of explain just a synopsis of the film?
I play a character called Annette in Magpie. I have a husband played by Shazad Latif called Ben in the film, and we have 2 kids in the film. And our little girl is cast in a film playing the stepdaughter of a very famous actress called Alicia. And my husband chaperones her to work and falls intensely and quickly in longing for the actress who is playing the motherly role to my child. And Annette is left at home with the baby, struggling under the weight of a lot of difficulties within the marriage and at breaking point. And the pressure is applied heavily. And the film follows where that pressure goes. Yeah.
And no, it's really great, guys. I heard like a collective sigh after that synopsis. I know you mentioned that your experience on The Marsh King's Daughter was the inspiration for the story, which you came up with. Can you take us through that inspiration and how you get from there to that synopsis?
It was really that me and Joey, who was playing my daughter, I just thought, how is this? It's so strange. You're on these sets, everything's super intense. Everything's like ramped up to 100. You're working together for 12 to 14 hours a day. Oftentimes very intimate, emotional scenes between people. And she knew, obviously, that I was not her parent, but she was calling me mummy at work. And I was like, this is so crazy. And her dad was chaperoning her, and her mum was at home with a baby and another child. So at the end of the job, when I had this idea, I was like, this isn't really about us. It was just, you know, that dynamic was interesting. But I got home and my husband, who's here somewhere, picked me up. And I told him the initial thing, and he really sculpted it into where it went, because initially the idea was an actress infiltrating a family and what that would do. And then Tom's feeling was that it was interesting to follow the wife who's left at home, who is not having fun and not in the romance of a film set. And she's looking after a small baby and struggling, really, with all of the weight of that.
What did development look like on this movie? You all had the idea for it in what year, and then at what point did you bring partners on to bring it to fruition?
It's all happened fairly quickly. Probably in the last 2.5 years, I'm going to say. I'm called the Rocket. I like to get shit done. I had the idea. Tom started writing. He's an amazingly fast writer, and also is, the tension and everything that is created in this story is unbelievable. And then we pitched to Kate Solomon, who came on, and she helped us craft the thing of what we know, what the audience knows, what the audience doesn't know, what we're seeing, is there anything we're not seeing, and weaving all that into the story. And then we brought on Sam, who pitched to us and was unbelievable, our director. And together it was really just a wonderful combination of energy and similar tastes, really. And the story that we wanted to make is the story that we've made, which is so wonderful. I was honestly so overwhelmed last night. I had a little cry when the credits ran, because it's a feat to make something, anything. And to do it with a group of people you really respect and admire, and to really be joyful in presenting something and standing solid with what you've presented is not always the case. And it's, I feel really genuinely so thrilled by the team that we had.
This is the second feature that you've starred in and produced. Performers talk about having more creative control when they also act as producers, but what does that look like practically? You know, what conversations and insights have you found helpful in your career as a producer that you weren't getting prior to that?
I have to say, the first set I was on playing a character for longer than a week, which was Star Wars, was a director who was so collaborative, so wonderful, made me feel heard, made me feel I had a voice. So I've actually always felt very included creatively, which is wonderful. I was credited as a producer on Sometimes I Think About Dying. I don't know that I deserved it. I was on and I helped secure financing, and I was asked about creative choices, which was wonderful. But lots of other people did so much work that I was not involved with. So this was really the first film where I was there from the ground up, on conversations about money and pre-sales and actually being in the Zoom room, because I was filming elsewhere, for casting and getting in heads of department. So in that respect, this was the first time that I was really part of all that. But it's funny, I'm literally mid-shooting a film now in Western Australia. It took me so long to get here. And the producer knows the producer of Young Woman in the Sea, and he was like, apparently you're such a great creative collaborator. And I was like, look, on this film, I'm good. Like, I'm good as an actress. And then lo and behold, I'm like having conversations about all sorts of things that I didn't really expect. So basically, I think I can't resist now getting involved. But it's wonderful. I'm not a writer, but I think I have good ideas. And as performers, I think you know when things work and when they don't. So feeling like you have a voice in any regard, whether you're credited or not, really, and people taking you seriously is quite amazing. But in terms of Magpie, I really have been there. I mean, Kate has done, obviously, much of the work, but also being in a position to employ people who are much more experienced than you are and know what they're doing, and then you're like, great, I can sit and watch you make these amazing decisions. So that's great. And what I really honestly wanted to do on Magpie was facilitate a great working environment. Like, I wanted people to feel safe. I wanted people to feel creative and respected and communicated to. And it sounds so silly, but food on film sets can be not very good. And we were like, the food has to be good, and there has to be coffee. People are working really hard. We want people to have a good time. And the hair up makeup designer on Magpie, Tamsin, came on to the last film I did in the UK. And she was like, God, the food was good on that job. And I thought,
what was the food? I gotta know.
We just had great caterers, and people were like looked forward to their meals. And it's, you know, when people are working these intense hours, and like it was a contained thing, and we were getting lots done. Just that moment to actually enjoy your rest time, and also sit around with people that you like. And so fostering a good work environment is something that I was really proud of at the end of the job, with a group of people who were really happy to be part of that experience.